Sonia, thank you very much for offering to be interviewed by ourselves today. Please tell me a bit of background about your business and what you're currently involved in.
Okay, well thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to meet with you. My business is currently working with young people, and I work part-time for an education trust, Prodigals Education Trust. My company is called Inspire to Learn. Before I even got there, my starting point was 12 years of experience working around managing and mentoring project across Lambeth.
Yes.
When my redundancy came, that was a golden opportunity to start Inspire to Learn, which is about putting outreach mentors in schools and continuing to provide that needed support for young people beyond the local authority being able to sustain that project.
Okay.
Prodigals Education Trust was set up back in 2009, part of Lambeth Council, but it's set up now as a trust, and their focus is initially around working with homeless young people and getting them to think about how they got there and the choices they make and the consequences. Now we're able to go into schools and work with other young people at a much earlier stage, so it can be more preventative.
Yes.
So to combine the two, it's the two Inspire to Learn and Prodigals Education Trust. The commonality is looking at young people and empowering them to think from early on about where they want to be in the future, what steps they need to take, and making them feel more in control to make the right decisions to become positive young people in our society.
Wonderful. So what inspired you to set this organisation up and work in this sector?
My inspiration, I would say, is being a mother and watching young boys grow up and seeing the challenges they have to go through and what support structure they needed to be who they are. And also having the opportunity to work as a coordinator for Lambeth, where I worked across all the Lambeth schools in supporting the mentors to develop their role. Within that, I was able to see that there's a continuing need for young people to be supported, a continuing need for parents to feel part of their children's education and to know what role they have to play and not feel excluded or judged because sometimes their children may not behave the way that's considered appropriate. And so I really grew that passion for always working with children and young people to see what difference I can make for their lives. So redundancy was like the door opening to go out there with no more restrictions of having to go through management decisions, but knowing from my heart and my experience what needed to be done and who I can support and how I can network and work with other organisations, which probably is why it brought me here today talking to you.
So what are your challenges that you've faced along this journey since setting up? What would you say has been the major challenges that you've come across?
So far, I don't feel I've had any major challenges as such, because I think the schools are very open on wanting the support, and they see a clear need for the children to continue to be supported.
Yes.
I guess the only challenge would be is getting to pin staff down sometimes to actually get the information to make funding applications.
Yes.
But other than that, the passion is there within the schools, the children are there quite easily to identify, and my energy is on full run at the moment.
Excellent. So do you get to work closely with the families of individuals, or are you more with the schools? Is it personal, or do you go into like the real families to find out, what's the background?
At the moment we're working really just with the children, because the children identified in the schools and the projects are written to work with the children.
Yes.
Likewise through Prodigals Education Trust, the work we do is with the young people. However, we have started a parenting project with one of our schools, and that's given us a really good opportunity to run a 6-week programme with a group of parents to support them to recognise what competing factors there are out there that stop their children from accessing the curriculum, and what things they need to think about and do to support their children, how they can engage with the school and how the school needs them as parents. And it's not a case of just them needing the school can't make that progress for their children without them, and getting them to feel empowered. So that project is really a big stepping stone for us through Inspire to Learn. And with Prodigals Education Trust, there are parenting classes that can be run. They have been run in the past. Since I've been part of the project, since August of this year. I haven't actually run any projects with parents, but that's something that we are definitely looking forward to doing more of, yeah.
Brilliant. So what's the age group that you're currently working with? Is it from, where's the youngest?
Okay, we've Inspired to Learn. The youngest children we're working with is in Key Stage 1.
Wow.
We're working straight up to Key Stage 2, the Year 6s.
Yeah.
And in secondary school, our focus has really been so far with prodigals, with the Year 9s to 11.
Yes.
And also with prodigals, we're working with the post-16, those that have left school. So the project that we're doing in conjunction with Centrepoint, for example, that's young people aged between 16 and 24.
Yes, wow. So what would you say, with what we're faced with in today's society, especially with the younger generation, what would you say are the root causes or anything that you've come across that, you know, is...
The root causes, I would say, are parents probably not understanding what needs to be done to support their children, not realising the impact sometimes of when they have to make that choice of going to work, so the financial reasons and the time constraints, and sometimes not knowing how to manage that. There's also the big issue, the wider issue of the postcode barriers that young people find themselves confined by,
Yes.
and the limitations that imposes on them,
Yes.
and sometimes them not realising that there is actually a much wider world. And when you think of the financial constraints, that can often limit young people with their whole choice of aspiration, because they're not experiencing coming out of their area, and they're not experiencing an awareness of opportunities, and that really narrows their focus and takes them into a limited mindset of behaving in a way that is not conducive to them sustaining a positive, long life.
Yeah. Wow. So would you say environment area has got a lot to do with what we're seeing?
Definitely,
Yes.
the environment, and also sometimes expectations that are placed on young people, the
Yes.
judgments that are made about them.
Yes.
If they start to misbehave, the focus is taken off of their ability. And if they have talents that are not necessarily academic talents,
Yeah.
they're not valued to raise the aspiration and the self-esteem of the individual. So they start to ignore those talents, judge themselves just by academics, and not see themselves in a positive way.
So Sonia, tell me about any of the success stories from individuals that's been through your programme.
Okay, thinking about one particular individual, he is quite conscious that the way he speaks, using street language, is not really taking him very far, and is not going to be conducive to him getting into the business world. He's really keen to set up his own company as an estate agent, and as he says, become a millionaire. And for him, knowing that the way he speaks is a barrier, he's now taking steps to change that. It is a challenge for him because it's the way he's spoken for a long time. But I felt quite positive that in doing the workshop, he became more focused on what he needed to do to change himself and take responsibility and ownership for doing that. And it's a small step towards moving towards him being able to communicate well. He's got a lot going for him, but yes, that's something that he's picked up for himself. And thinking of another young man who was aware that the way he dressed,
Yes.
he felt comfortable like that, and he felt that that was his identity, and he felt somewhat challenged by why should he change the way he dressed for an employer. And what was interesting was within the workshop, the other young people were able to give him reasons why he needed to think about the way he dressed and why he needed to take on board changing the way he dressed for different situations. And so I think the workshops were both empowering the young people
Yes.
to support each other, but it was also allowing them to see and address and have a wake-up call for themselves to think about what they needed to do to make a change.
Cool. Okay, so is there any current workshops that you've got coming up in the near future?
Yes, definitely. We have a workshop, Choices for Life, which is around making choices, the consequences of the choices you make, to taking responsibility. All that's within Choices for Life, and the other half is called Ready for Work, and that's done through Prodigals Education Trust. And that will be starting shortly in a couple of weeks, and will be run at Lansdowne Youth Centre. And we have, places for more young people to attend, so we're happy for parents, all young people, to contact us direct.
So do you work on a referral basis? How do people get in contact with you?
Well, they can contact us through via the emails, so they can contact me directly on sonia.townsend@live.com.
Yes.
Or they can contact us by going on the Prodigals Education Trust website, which is www.prodigalseducationtrust.org. Or they can contact me at Inspire to Learn, which is Sonia@Inspire2Learn, which is a hyphen between inspired-to-learn.co.uk. And because I'm working with both organisations, if they weren't sure which work they wanted to contact, I'd be the person to have a conversation and get back.
And is there any screening process, any criteria that any young person has to meet, or can they just be referred?
I would like them to feel, parents and young people to feel open to contact us, because that way we can look at if what they're thinking about is not right, we'll have other opportunities to put them in the direction of. But the workshops that we do through Prodigals are, looking at secondary school age children, and post 16, and Inspire to Learn. We are doing a lot of work within the primary and secondary schools.
Wonderful. Okay, well that sounds brilliant. I look forward to possibly coming down to one of your workshops as well, and to seeing you hands-on doing what's great work you've already started. So thank you again for offering to share such fantastic information with us about what you're currently doing, and please continue, keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. It's been great talking to you this afternoon.
There's nothing else to compare. There's nothing else to compare.
Nope. There it is.